History is often a slow tide, but occasionally it is a tectonic shift. We measure time in centuries and decades, yet the direction of the 21st century was decided in a mere 102 minutes. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the world did not just witness a tragedy. It witnessed the end of an era of perceived invulnerability. How did the world's most powerful structures fail to see what was coming? And how did we become the people we are today in the wake of their fall? This is not just a chronicle of a day, but an investigation into the architecture of consequence and the fragility of global order. To understand the smoke over Manhattan, one must first understand the dust of the Hindu Kush. The end of the Cold War left behind a landscape of forgotten soldiers and sharpened ideologies. In the 1990s, while the West celebrated the end of history, a new form of transnational grievance was fermenting. The Soviet-Afghan War had created a vacuum of power, filled by those who saw globalization not as progress, but as a threat. The lesson here is the law of unintended consequences.
Responsible for those killed in Palestine, Lebanon, and Iraq. Due to its subordination to the Jews, the arrogance of the United States regime has reached the point
reminded that a vacuum of power will always be filled, often by the most radical elements available. The warnings were not absent. They were scattered. Intelligence agencies, bound by their own bureaucracies, saw fragments of a mosaic they could not yet assemble. In the shadows of globalization, a small group utilized the very tools of the modern world, commercial aviation, international banking, and open borders, to plan its destruction. This era reveals a timeless principle. Information is useless without integration. Behavioral science teaches us that confirmation bias, the tendency to ignore data that does not fit our current model of reality, is the primary cause of systemic failure. Historically, we see that complacency is the most dangerous byproduct of long-term peace. The storm was gathering, but the world was looking elsewhere, rooted in the certainty of its own security. At 8:46 a.m., the abstraction of a threat became a concrete reality. The mechanics of the day were precise and devastating. In the moments of impact and the subsequent collapse of the Twin Towers, the physical world and the psychological world merged. For those on the ground and those watching across the globe, the primary emotion was a profound, chilling realization that the rules of the world had changed. In a crisis, the quality of individual character becomes the only remaining infrastructure. We witnessed the extraordinary human capacity for self-sacrifice when faced with absolute catastrophe. However, we also learned a harsh historical warning. Symbolic targets carry more weight than tactical ones in the age of global media. The world's focus had shifted forever. The response was swift and total. Nations rallied, but in the haste to reclaim security, the boundaries of privacy and international law began to blur. The war on terror was declared.
Today our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America.
A conflict with no clear borders and no defined end. The world moved from a state of post-Cold War optimism to a state of permanent vigilance. This transition highlights a timeless principle. Fear is the most effective catalyst for the surrender of liberty. Under threat, societies prioritize us versus them narratives, often at the expense of nuance and long-term strategy. The historical warning is clear. Total security is an illusion that often costs more than a society can afford to pay. The pivot was not just military. It was a fundamental shift in the human social contract. Decades later, the physical scars have been built over, but the psychological architecture remains. We live in a world defined by the pre-9/11 and post-9/11 divide. It taught us that our systems are fragile, our convictions are powerful, and our resilience is our greatest asset. History does not move in a straight line. It moves in circles of action and reaction. At its core, this event was a collision between the certainty of belief and the vulnerability of openness. It revealed that when we are most certain, we are often most blind. Power is not merely military might, but narrative control and psychological endurance. The cost of ideological rigidity is always paid in human life, and resilience is our only viable response to systemic collapse. We are the inheritors of this history. We live within the ripples of a stone cast over 20 years ago. The towers are gone, the maps have been redrawn, and the laws have been rewritten. But the fundamental question of that day remains for each of us to answer. In our pursuit of safety, what are we willing to sacrifice? And in our pursuit of justice, how do we ensure we do not become the very thing we fear? History is not a series of dates, but a burden of responsibility. As we look back at the day the world changed, we must ask, what have we truly learned? The answer lies not in our defenses, but in our character.